All right, artists, before we go over our demonstration, we are going to review what we learned yesterday. Because this whole unit, we are going to be working in monotones, so it's very important to know what monochromatic means. Speaking of which, who remembers what monochromatic means? Yes, it does mean working with one color. To add on to that, that one color is a hue that can be broken up into shades, tones, and tints. And a hue is our main colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. We used violet yesterday. That is our main color, our pure color. And then when we added white, it became our tint, which is our lilac purple. Then when we added black, that was our Delilah purple, so that's our darkest color. So we can see these and use these in our drawings to create depth. So it looks like the object is curving around. We explore what these colors look like next to each other by using a value scale. Who can tell me what a value scale is? Yeah, the transition between light and dark, or dark and light. They can be used together. So our lightest colors we used around the highlight, and our darkest color, our shade, we used in the shadows. And then our pure color we used to blend in or in the midsection of our sphere. Can anyone tell me what a gradient is? Give you a hint. Gradients can be seen here in our value scale, and it can also be seen here in this sphere. Yes, colors. So although these are all violet, there's still a transition of color going on here because we do have our shade and that ends, and then we have our pure color and that ends, and then we have our tint. But these don't end abruptly like they do up here, where you can really see that shade, pure color, and tint. Instead, they are blended together, and it is how that transition happens. This is very smooth, just as it is here in our sphere. And who can tell me why we might use cross-hatching in a drawing? Why wouldn't we completely render the whole piece? Very good, yeah, it draws your attention back to our focal point, back to our sphere. This is what I want you guys to look at. So I used cross-hatching to draw you in. And cross-hatching isn't the only way we can draw someone in, but it is just one skill to know. All right, now that we finished our review, we're gonna move on to the demonstration. First thing you're gonna wanna do is choose the color and hue you will be using for your monochromatic self-portrait. And it's important that this color means something to you or portrays the mood or something about you, because this is a self-portrait, so that color should reflect you. I chose green for mine because green was my childhood favorite color. It reminds me of summertime and it just makes me happy. Getting started, the first thing you're going to want to do is make a little gradients, a value scale of your colors, just so you can make sure that they look great together, that your green's not actually a blue green or an indigo. So you just want to test them out, know which one's your darkest dark and which one's your highlight, so you know where to place them, just like we did with the sphere. The next thing, you're going to want to do is outline your sketch. So we sketched this out together our last lesson, and finishing up your drawing and your outline. And then once you're done with that, you're gonna outline it with your lightest tint or color. So if we either make a mistake or it is a very light spot in the face or the photo, then we can go back over it nice and easy and that line will be covered. And after that, you're gonna start blocking in your colors. And to block in, it can seem very intimidating because you have this white sheet of paper with your outline on it. You don't wanna mess it up. And the biggest way to overcome that is to just start putting some colors down. You should have your reference photo right next to you so you can constantly be looking back and forth and referring to that. So what I did is I placed my background colors in right away. We can see over here it is very, very dark, probably the darkest in the whole picture. So I just put that dark green down, which is my grass green. And then over here we have this lighter shadow, and in the background it's pretty white, so I just left that white for now. I can revisit that later. I just wanted to get something in the background so it's not as intimidating. The next thing you're gonna want to do is look at where your darkest darks and your lightest lights are in your reference photos. So we can do that together. I already marked one, which is the background. Can you guys place any other darkest darks for me? Yeah, my sweatshirt is very dark, so I'm gonna know that I'm gonna want this to be that darkest green. What else is dark or in the shadows? My hair, definitely. So this is gonna be pretty dark. And now we're gonna look at the highlights. So the highlights are the brightest points. So my light source is coming from both behind me and in front of me, which is why I have some highlights on my face. And I already sketched in my highlights, but now I can just go over them with my green just nicely so I know where they are, because your highlights, like your sphere, you're not gonna want to put much, if any, colored pencil right there, depending on how bright the highlight is. So you're just gonna wanna stay clear of that space for a little bit, especially while blocking. Blocking, you're just getting colors down and choosing what you want to keep. So this is kind of a time to consider what you might wanna draw and include and what you don't wanna include. The next thing you're gonna do is pick a starting place. I did pick the background, but now I'm gonna move on to the face for you guys. So I'm gonna go in with my darkest green now, and I'm gonna start with the line right here. And first, I'm just going to get comfortable with the shape of my face, and I'm gonna kind of look at how that shadow is on the face. And it's okay, it doesn't have to be completely precise. And the reason for that is we're gonna go back over with our pure color, our pure green, and blend that in too. So it's not just gonna be one color. We're gonna be adding multiple layers of greens so they blend in nicely. Okay, so here I see that there's kind of a shadow there. So I'm going to shade right there. There's a shadow above my eye. And put some darker green there. And this line's pretty dark. Okay. All right. So now that I have a few shadows placed, and I'm just gonna focus in on this area. You can put all your shadows in at once, just marking them very softly. You don't wanna go in too dark, because once a color's down, it is very hard to lighten that space back up. We can always make your image darker, your project darker. It's hard to subtract that colored pencil. So I'm just gonna focus on this one area. Now I feel like I kind of placed the shadows in all right for that area. Maybe I wanna add one by the nose. Maybe there's a little bit here. Pale green. And okay, I know my highlight is there, so I can kind of just color around that highlight. Like I said, maybe leave it pretty white for now. You can always revisit that and darken it up later. And let's see, it's pretty bright here, so I can add that there. And the corner of my eye is pretty bright. And by my chin. So I'm blocking it in, just adding some color. I'm not afraid of going into that dark green. So now that I have my highlights marked and my shadows marked, I can go in with my pure tone, and I can kind of start blending it, moving those colors together, giving that gradients. Just like with the sphere, you want it to be nice and smooth because our skin is very smooth. And we're just gonna fill it in a little bit because we're just blocking it in. It does not need to be perfect. You will be revisiting this. You will be going back to refine it, adding those details. Right now we're just putting colors down so we have something to play with, something to build off of. It's very hard to add to something when there's not much there to add on. If you find yourself struggling to find those highlights or shadows, something you can do is you can squint your eyes and you can look at your reference drawing. So now I can see, oh, okay, my lips are about the same value as the shadow on my nose. So those should be about the same color and darkness. Okay, what else is the same? This line, this line, this line, and this line are all about the same value again. So that'll just help you looking back and forth. Okay, so now I can see when I'm squinting, this part of my face should be lighter than what I have it. So I can go back in with my lighter green because that's lighter. And then around it, I'm like, okay, well, that's actually a little darker than what I made it. So it's an easy way to compare. You constantly want to be referring to that reference photo. And once you get more confident, you can start putting in harder lines, harder values to make them more distinct. But it's okay if you wait to do that. Like I said, you should just be focusing on putting colors down, just blocking it in. Like right here, I'm like, okay, that's a lot of dark. I'm just gonna fill it in. Just like that. I'm not too messy, but I'm also just letting my pencil put pigment down. Because later I can go over this, I can make it darker, I can add some of these highlights, as long as we're staying soft and smooth, which is why it's important when you're blocking to just stay very light with your pencil. Because if I want to go back and change this line now, it's gonna be very difficult for me because it's already so solid. And the last thing I want to point out when you're choosing your color is to think about what other elements you might want to add. So I do have quite a bit of space around my head, and maybe I want to leave that. Maybe I like how that looks, but maybe later on I'm going to decide, well, you know, green reminds me of summer and that makes me happy. Well, butterflies are also in summer and I love butterflies and I used to try to catch them as a kid, so I want to include those in my self-portrait. So maybe then I'm deciding I'm gonna have a butterfly over there and I'm gonna color that in more and add value to that, and I'm making that up. So as you're choosing your color, really think about what you're trying to say about yourself, what it's portraying. If it's a silly picture, maybe you want it to be bright orange. What do colors mean, and how is that going to catch the viewer's eyes? How is that going to tell a story? So that's really what I want you guys to be thinking about today in class, because next we are going to be going back to our seats and talking to our neighbor about what color we should choose for our self-portraits. You can share your ideas, share what you guys are thinking, and if you're struggling, call me on over and I can help you guys out. You're using the same techniques that we used with the sphere, because you can look at my cheek and see, oh, it's also round. The light's hitting it right there, which means the tint goes there, the pure color goes there, and the shade goes there. Here I'm using cross-hashing because it's in the background. Think about where you might want to put that. So you guys got a few things to consider. Discuss with a partner. When we go back to our seats, you guys will have about 5 minutes, and then we are going to have some work time, and you guys can either finish up sketching or start blocking in your pieces. Ready, set, go.